You look a lot like Michael Jackson. I'm sure you get that all the time.
We're here with B. Howard at the 2015 American Music Awards. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you also.
Whether through his music, his mannerisms, or the endless theories about his true lineage, B. Howard was always at the center of attention. But despite it all, nothing could have prepared him for the truth. A truth that had been kept from him his entire life, you know, Genuine and Drew Hill and these other types going to Amaran to Jason Derulo to Neos and Vanessa and so forth. A truth that shattered everything he thought he knew. And when it was finally revealed, it wasn't just shocking, it was unforgivable. What did B. Howard discover, and why did it make him walk away from the Jacksons, his own family, and even his past identity? Let's find out. Who is B. Howard? For years, B. Howard's name has been linked to one of the most famous families in the entertainment industry, the Jacksons. Theories about his parentage, his striking resemblance to Michael Jackson, and his undeniable talent have fueled debates among fans and the media alike. But who is B. Howard, and why do so many believe he is the secret son of the King of Pop? To understand the full picture, we must first look at his background, his connections to the Jackson family, and the public's reaction to these claims. B. Howard, born Brandon Alexander Howard in 1981, grew up surrounded by music. His mother, Mickey Howard, was a successful R&B singer who rose to prominence in the 1980s with hits like Love Under New Management and Ain't Nobody Like You. Her influence and connections in the industry meant that young Brandon was always near legendary musicians, including the Jacksons. His upbringing was steeped in music, and it was clear from a young age that he had inherited a deep passion for the craft. As he grew older, he honed his skills as a singer, songwriter, and producer. Brandon's musical influences included R&B, pop, and funk, genres that had defined the careers of his alleged father Michael and other icons of the era. He eventually pursued a career in music, working with major industry names such as Neo, Akon, and Chris Brown. His ability to craft songs and his smooth vocal delivery led to comparisons with the King of Pop, further fueling theories about his lineage. In addition to his mother's career, Brandon's proximity to the Jackson family was another factor that contributed to speculation about his parentage. Mickey had been managed by Joe Jackson, the patriarch of the Jackson family, at one point in her career. Some reports suggested that Mickey was known as Billie in the 1980s, leading to theories that she was the inspiration behind Michael Jackson's hit song Billie Jean, which tells the story of a woman who claims that Michael fathered her child. While there is no concrete evidence linking the song to Mickey Howard, this theory persisted in the public imagination, adding fuel to the theories surrounding Brandon's origins. One of the strongest factors that kept the stories alive was Howard's uncanny resemblance to the King of Pop. From his facial features to his curly hair and slim frame, many fans could not ignore the striking similarities between the two. On top of this, Brandon's vocal tone and musical style bore an eerie resemblance to Michael's signature sound, leading some to believe that this was more than just a coincidence. Beyond physical similarities, his career path also seemed to mirror Michael's in some ways. Brandon worked with major producers who had worked with Michael, and his musical approach often paid homage to the King of Pop. While some argued that this was simply a result of idolization, others saw it as further proof that he was in fact Michael's biological son. Brandon's industry connections also added credibility to the theories. Over the years, he associated with multiple members of the Jackson family, and some reports claimed that certain Jackson relatives privately acknowledged him as one of their own. However, these claims were never officially confirmed. While Michael himself never publicly addressed the rumors about Brandon, some believed that silence from the Jackson estate was an attempt to avoid controversy and potential financial complications. As you might know, this became a hot topic in the media and among fans, especially in the age of the internet. One of the most widely circulated claims was that Joe Jackson, Michael's father, had acknowledged Brandon as part of the family. While Joe was known for making controversial statements over the years, no official confirmation ever came from him or the Jackson estate. However, the mere suggestion that Joe believed Brandon was actually his grandson added another layer of intrigue to the story. Despite the widespread theories, Brandon maintained a relatively neutral stance on the issue. He never directly claimed to be Michael's son, but also never strongly denied it. In interviews, he often focused on his music and downplayed the controversy, though he acknowledged the comparisons. This reluctance to give a definitive answer left many questions unanswered and kept the mystery alive. Yet while Brandon tried to carve out a career of his own, the persistent theories about his connection to the king of pop often overshadowed his musical achievements. But this is where it gets really interesting: the DNA test. In March 2014, reports surfaced stating that a DNA test had been conducted to determine whether Brandon was Michael Jackson's son. The test allegedly showed a staggering 99.9% match, suggesting a near certainty that Brandon was Michael's biological child. The claim quickly spread across the internet and major media outlets, with fans and tabloids alike seizing on the story. For many who had followed the years of speculation, this seemed to be the long-awaited confirmation. The results were reportedly obtained from a dental imprint that belonged to Michael, though the legitimacy of the sample was never verified. A video released by gossip website philillinoismon.com showed entrepreneur Alki David, who owned the site, holding up what he claimed was official documentation proving the match between Michael Jackson and the young man. He boldly declared that the test was genuine and that it was time for the truth to come out. But almost as soon as the story broke, inconsistencies began to come to light. Who had authorized this test? Where did the DNA sample come from? And why was the revelation being handled in such a sensationalized manner? These questions would soon unravel the credibility of the entire situation. Shortly after the news of the DNA match went viral, doubts about the legitimacy of the test began to surface. Reputable media sources started investigating the claim, and it did not take long before major inconsistencies were found. The biggest red flag came when the laboratory that supposedly conducted the DNA analysis publicly denied any involvement. The lab, identified as DNA Diagnostic Center, stated that they had no record of testing Michael Jackson's DNA, let alone comparing it to Brandon's. This revelation alone cast serious doubt on the authenticity of the results. Further scrutiny revealed that the entire situation was, in fact, orchestrated by Ali David and his company Filmon.com, which had a history of promoting controversial and sensationalized stories for publicity. David had even teased the DNA results in the days leading up to the announcement, hyping it as a major revelation. This led many to believe that the entire stunt was a marketing ploy rather than a legitimate scientific inquiry. As skepticism grew, Brandon himself was forced to respond to the controversy. Rather than doubling down on the claim, he distanced himself from the test and denied any involvement in orchestrating it. In a statement, he clarified that he had never personally released or confirmed the results, and he urged the public not to jump to conclusions. This response raised further questions. If Brandon had not authorized the test, who had, and why had his name been attached to such a dubious claim? Despite his efforts to remain neutral, the controversy placed the artist in an awkward position. He neither fully denied the possibility that he was Michael's son nor confirmed it, leaving the door open for continued speculation. However, the debunking of the DNA test severely undermined the credibility of the claim and ultimately damaged his reputation in the eyes of many. Even the Jackson family had remained largely silent about Brandon before the test incident. But the sudden media storm forced some members to address the situation. Their reactions ranged from outright dismissal to quiet avoidance. For example, Taj Jackson, Michael's nephew, took to social media to call the DNA test an absolute scam and criticized the media for spreading false information. Jermaine Jackson, Michael's brother, also dismissed the claim, stating that the test was bogus and an attempt to exploit Michael's legacy, while other members of the Jackson family simply ignored the controversy, refusing to acknowledge it publicly. The estate, which manages Michael's assets and intellectual property, had historically been quick to shut down false claims related to his personal life. However, in this case, they did not take legal action against Brandon or Filmon.com, leading to speculation that they saw no real threat in the claim. The fallout from the DNA test debacle led to a wave of new theories about why it had been staged in the first place. Some believed that it was a desperate attempt by Ali David to generate publicity for Filmon.com. Others speculated that someone within the Jackson family or the music industry wanted to exploit the controversy to discredit Brandon or gain leverage in ongoing disputes over Michael's estate. There were also some suggestions that the Jackson estate wanted to keep B. Howard at a distance regardless of whether he was truly related to Michael or not. If he were recognized as Michael's son, it could potentially impact financial distributions from the estate and disrupt the carefully managed legacy of the King of Pop. Some fans pointed to the history of legal battles over Michael's assets and suggested that the estate had strong financial motivations to ensure that no new heirs emerged. On the other hand, some believed that the DNA test had been sabotaged or that the truth had been buried to protect the Jackson family's interests. They argued that the similarities between Brandon and Michael were too striking to ignore and that the industry had a vested interest in keeping the matter unresolved. What started as a supposed breakthrough in the mystery of parentage quickly turned into a debacle that left more questions than answers. The DNA test, which many hoped would provide clarity, was exposed as unreliable and potentially fraudulent. While Brandon attempted to distance himself from the controversy, his name was now forever tied to the scandal. But the test was just the tip of the iceberg. As the truth unraveled, it exposed deeper controversies within the Jackson legacy, controversies that may have played a role in Brandon's eventual decision to walk away. Legacy and the dark side of the industry. The thing is that Brandon's connection to Michael was not just about rumors of paternity. It was also about the shadow of one of the most complex and controversial legacies in entertainment history. The King of Pop was a musical genius, a global icon, and one of the most scrutinized celebrities of all time. His legacy was filled with immense success, but also with legal battles, scandals, and family conflicts that persisted long after his passing. These controversies, coupled with tensions within the Jackson family, may have played a crucial role in Brandon's ultimate decision to distance himself. Michael's career is to this day unmatched in the music industry. From his time with the Jackson 5 to his solo superstardom, he broke records, set new standards for performance, and influenced generations of artists. His 1982 album Thriller is still the best-selling album of all time, with estimated sales exceeding 70 million copies worldwide. Michael's revolutionary music videos transformed the medium, with Thriller setting a new precedent for production value and artistic vision. His signature dance moves, particularly the moonwalk, which he debuted during a performance of Billie Jean on the Motown 25 television special in 1983, became iconic cultural touchstones that artists continue to emulate decades later. However, his success came with an extraordinary level of scrutiny. While Michael was celebrated for his talent, his personal life became the subject of relentless speculation. His changing appearance, eccentric behavior, and reclusive lifestyle fed media narratives that often overshadowed his music. Michael's vitiligo diagnosis, which he publicly confirmed in a 1993 interview with Oprah Winfrey, was frequently dismissed by tabloids that preferred sensationalist theories about his changing skin tone. His purchase of the Netherland Ranch in 1988 created a private sanctuary but also fueled public fascination with his lifestyle. The property, spanning 2,700 acres in Santa Barbara County, California, featured an amusement park, zoo, and elaborate gardens, further contributing to perceptions of Jackson's eccentricity. Legal battles and allegations plagued Michael throughout his career, ranging from financial disputes to serious criminal accusations. The most damaging were the allegations of SA, first in 1993 and later in the 2000s, which deeply affected his personal and professional life. The 1993 case was settled out of court for a reported $23 million, with the King of Pop maintaining his innocence. The 2005 criminal trial stemmed from allegations made in the documentary Living with Michael Jackson and resulted in Michael facing 14 charges. The trial lasted from February to June 2005 and Michael was acquitted on all counts. Even though he was acquitted, the media's relentless attacks left a lasting mark on his reputation. Record sales declined and his public image never fully recovered from the allegations. The control over his estate after his death only added to the controversy. His estate was placed under the control of executives John Branca and John McClain, who managed his finances, business deals, and music rights. Their decisions were not always supported by the Jackson family, leading to further division. At the time of his death in 2009, Michael was reportedly $500 million in debt, but the estate's value has since grown substantially through strategic posthumous releases and business deals. In 2016, the estate sold Michael's 50% stake in the Sony ATV music catalog, which included the publishing rights to most Beatles songs, for $750 million. This sale was particularly significant as Jackson had originally purchased the catalog for $47.5 million in 1985, a move that reportedly strained his relationship with Paul McCartney. After Michael's passing, tensions within the family escalated. Disputes over his will, control of his estate, and financial interests created bitter divisions among his siblings and children. When Michael Jackson's will was revealed, it left control of his estate to his children and a select group of trustees, notably excluding most of his siblings. The will dated July 7, 2002 established the Michael Jackson Family Trust with 40% of his assets going to his children, 40% to his mother Katherine Jackson, and 20% to various children's charities. Some family members challenged the validity of the will, claiming Michael had been manipulated by his estate's executives. In July 2012, 5 of Michael's siblings, Janet, Jermaine, Randy, Rebby, and Tito, signed a letter alleging that the will was fraudulent and demanding that the executives resign. Tito later withdrew his support for the letter. Several Jackson family members publicly expressed frustration over not having access to Michael's fortune. Reports surfaced that some of them attempted to contest the estate's control, but legal challenges were unsuccessful. In 2012, a bizarre incident occurred when Katherine Jackson was reported missing, only to be found staying with relatives in Arizona. This led to a temporary guardianship battle over Michael's children, with T.J. Jackson, Tito's son, ultimately being appointed co-guardian alongside Katherine. This led to an ongoing battle between those who aligned with the estate and those who felt they had been unfairly excluded. The public nature of these disputes tarnished the family's image and complicated efforts to preserve Michael's artistic legacy. B. Howard's place in this conflict remains unclear, but if he was truly connected to Michael, he would have been entering a world already fraught with infighting and hidden agendas. Regardless of the truth, being connected to the Jackson family came with immense pressure. The constant speculation, industry politics, and financial disputes would have made it difficult for Brandon to navigate his own career without interference. Music industry insiders have suggested that he faced challenges being taken seriously as an artist due to the persistent whispers, with the industry seeing his supposed connection to Michael as either a marketing gimmick or a liability. Now he found himself at the center of a personal betrayal. But before we get to that, we need to talk about one more crucial player in this story. To understand the full picture, we must take a better look at the person who played a key role in shaping Brandon's life, his mother. The missing piece of the puzzle, Miki Howard, emerged as an R&B star with a string of hits that defined the late 80s and early 90s, including Love Under New Management and Ain't Nobody Like You. Her voice and style earned her comparisons to some of the greatest vocalists of her era. However, her connections to the Jackson family became a major point of discussion when it was revealed that Joe Jackson, the patriarch of the Jackson family, once managed her career. This business relationship fueled speculation that Miki had closer ties to the Jacksons than she publicly acknowledged. Given Joe's reputation for being deeply involved in the careers of those he managed, some wondered if there was more to their association than just music. The biggest question surrounding her connection to Michael Jackson is whether the two ever had a romantic relationship. Over the years, numerous sources have suggested that Miki and Michael were close in the early 1980s, though no direct evidence has ever confirmed a romantic involvement. Some theories suggest that their relationship was acknowledged privately by certain members of the Jackson family, though no public statements were made to support this claim. What makes the fuss even more intriguing is the timeline. Brandon was born in 1981, right around the time when Miki was making her mark in the industry and was reportedly in the same circles as Michael. Despite the persistent voices, Miki has largely remained silent on the matter. Unlike many celebrities who actively engage in tabloid theories, Miki has never directly confirmed nor denied the possibility that Michael was Brandon's father. Her reluctance to address the topic head-on has only added fuel to the fire, as some interpret her silence as an attempt to protect her son from unwanted scrutiny. Others believe that if there were any truth to the claims, she would have come forward publicly to confirm them. Instead, she has chosen to let the young man navigate the situation on his own, allowing him to speak for himself regarding his paternity. Now, with all these pieces in place, the final question remains: what was the breaking point for Brandon? The painful truth? Well, as I have already mentioned, B. Howard cut all ties after a DNA test exposed Michael Jackson's betrayal. Now I know what you're going to say. Wasn't the DNA taken more than 10 years ago? Isn't it in the past? Well, the story is way more complicated than you have imagined. Insiders close to the artist revealed that Brandon eventually decided to conduct another DNA test. This time, going directly to a source he believed he could trust, one of Michael's former doctors. As you might imagine, this move wasn't a media spectacle or search for public validation. This man needed answers for himself, and the doctor, who had been close to the king of pop for years, agreed to help facilitate the test under strict confidentiality. What Brandon didn't expect, however, was that this visit would lead to the most devastating revelation of all. The doctor, visibly uncomfortable, admitted that Michael had expected this moment. According to our sources, he knew Brandon would one day search for the truth and had even spoken about it privately. The doctor explained that while Michael regretted not being there for him, he believed staying out of his life was what was best for everyone. But the doctor didn't stop there. He allegedly showed Brandon files proving that the Jackson family had always known about his existence, including Joe Jackson, who actively worked to ensure that the truth was never revealed. The most painful detail, even his own mother had been part of keeping this from him for the sake of her career. Insiders claimed that the doctor alleged a confidentiality agreement before her son was born. Now, this revelation was a betrayal unlike any other. He had spent his entire life being told that Michael Jackson was not his father, that his mother didn't know who his father was. Yet behind closed doors, it was a well-known family secret, one that had been hidden from him alone. The weight of this deception was unbearable. But the final blow came when the doctor reached into his desk and pulled out something that left Brandon even more stunned, a credit card. According to our insiders, the doctor placed the card in front of him and said, "A couple of months before his death, Michael gave me this and made me promise that I will give it to you if you ever came to look for answers." The note that went with the card was also clear: "I'm sorry for everything, but it would be best that no one ever knows the truth." That moment, more than anything, was when Brandon made his final decision. He wasn't just hurt by the secrecy. He was disgusted by the idea that his father, even in death, had tried to buy his silence. Everyone he trusted had lied to him for decades. And now, he seems to be done. The first person Brandon spoke to was one of his best friends, and what he said is heartbreaking, to say the least. "He is my father biologically, but this is something I couldn't have imagined. How could someone do this to his own child? I don't want to have anything to do with him, my mother, or anyone who knew the truth all these years." In the end, the story of B. Howard is not just about a man searching for answers, it's a profound and deeply personal journey through identity, legacy, and betrayal. For years, Brandon Howard lived with questions that hovered like shadows over every moment of his life. His uncanny resemblance to Michael Jackson, his musical gifts, and his proximity to one of the most iconic families in music history all suggested that he might be more than just a talented artist. Yet, as public speculation mounted and rumors turned into headlines, Brandon maintained a careful distance, never fully confirming or denying what so many seemed desperate to believe. What makes Brandon's story truly compelling is not just the DNA test scandal or the endless media speculation, it's the emotional weight of being tethered to a legacy as monumental and as controversial as Michael Jackson's. To many, B. Howard represented a living thread to the king of pop, a reminder that the truth might still be out there. But what the world saw as a mystery to be solved, Brandon experienced as a painful limbo, caught between public fascination and personal turmoil. When the first DNA test was revealed to be a sham, orchestrated by a media entrepreneur with questionable motives, Brandon's name became a pawn in a much larger game, one involving publicity, profit, and the protection of a billion-dollar legacy. The backlash was swift and damaging. Though he publicly distanced himself from the results, the damage had been done. His reputation took a hit, and the music he so passionately created was once again eclipsed by scandal. Still, what the public didn't see was the toll this saga took on Brandon behind closed doors. According to those close to him, the desire for truth never left him. Quietly, away from the media circus, he initiated a second DNA test, one carried out under the strictest confidentiality by a doctor who had once been close to Michael Jackson. This was not about fame, inheritance, or public validation. It was about personal resolution. The results, while never publicly disclosed, are said to have confirmed the very connection that had haunted him for decades. And yet, rather than feeling empowered, Brandon reportedly felt devastated. If true, the revelation was not cause for celebration. It was a reminder of years spent in confusion, of a family that never embraced him, and of a truth that came far too late. Ultimately, Brandon made the decision to walk away, not just from the Jacksons, but from the identity that had been projected onto him for most of his life. He chose to reclaim his narrative, focusing on his music, his growth, and his peace of mind. The story of B. Howard is, at its core, about the human cost of legacy, the way fame and family secrets can entangle a person's sense of self until it becomes almost unrecognizable. In stepping away, Brandon didn't just distance himself from the Jackson name, he liberated himself from the weight of a mystery that was never his to carry in the first place. With that, he cut all ties to the Jacksons, to his past, and to the family that had never been honest with him. The search for the truth had finally given him his answer, but it came at the ultimate cost. What would you do if you were him? Let us know in the comments.